state versus federal prosecution in the Tupac Shakur murder case. Ladies and gentlemen, don't get the two twisted. Here's the reason why Keefe D was actually charged. Most people don't understand. Let's get into some of the straight game.
Life is like some cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. It's your boy Delray Richardson, platinum artist, platinum songwriter, Straight Game TV. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your time. Do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button. Also subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And like I always say, if you want to be one of the first people notified when I drop some of the straight game, please do me a favor and click on what appears to be that little bell notification right below this video. I'm going to get right into it, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said before, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of people have gotten this situation involving the Tupac murder trial case, a trial coming up, a very mixed up, if you will. Like I said, Keefe D's former lawyer, Carl Arnold, not too long ago, basically admitted that it's going to be somewhat problematic for Keefe D in regards to the 2009 statement involving his case, ladies and gentlemen. I wanted to really get that, get that right, and then deal with the aspect of, because a lot of people say, well, and even his lawyer was saying, well, if they had all of this information back since 2009, then how come they didn't actually bring a case? Right? A lot of people, I've seen it in numerous questions asked in regard to that. And it's a great question, like I said, for people who really don't know how the law works, right? Well, first and foremost, as it relates to murder, for most people who do know, there is no statute of limitations. That means, you could be 101 years old and murdered somebody when you were 21 years old, and at 101, they could charge you with that crime. You know what I mean? It never expires. They charge you like it happened yesterday. That's number one. Number two, in dealing with having a federal deal or federal proffer agreement, that's what Keefe D had in dealing with Greg Kading, right? He had a deal with the DEA. It was a DEA situation where basically he gave up a proffer agreement. He was debriefed, and they gave him their word that he wouldn't be charged, based on his admission to the involvement in the murder of Tupac Shakur, ladies and gentlemen. That happened in 2008, right? In 2009, Keefe D was, went to Las Vegas to talk to the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Ladies and gentlemen, he was not granted immunity under that interview. The first one with Greg Kading was with the feds, the United States Attorney, and the second one was with the state of Nevada. Now let's get into it, right? Keefe D's former lawyer, Carl Arnold, coming out basically saying that Keefe D's own 2009 confession to the murder of Tupac Shakur could basically make him liable. So there's like I said, when you're doing this from an unbiased standpoint, right? It's different than, presenting just one side of the information, which seems like you're going against somebody or for somebody, right? Let's be clear. None of us put Keefe D in this situation, right? We are basically commenting on things that happened and things that were commented on with Keefe D's book, Art of Dialogue, Vlad, the many statements that he's made in regards to Tupac and, all of the things that he's talked about, right? That's right, right? This situation right here and is basically a game changer, right? In the ongoing story, right, of Tupac Shakur's murder. And we're going to break it down piece by piece. I'm going to break this down piece by piece, right? So ladies and gentlemen, let's set the scene. Let's wind it back to 2009. Keefe D sits down. Well, let's go back to 2008. Keefe D sits down with federal investigators doing what's known as a proffer session, right? Now, for those who don't know, a proffer is basically when you tell everything you know, and in return, you hope to avoid prosecution. Kind of like trading information for immunity, right? In that session that Keefe D had with the government, the DEA, right? Keefe D admitted point blank that he was in the white Cadillac on the night of September 7th, 1996, when Tupac was shot in Las Vegas. He even named his nephew Orlando Anderson as the shooter. At the time, many thought his statements would stay buried, right? Stay buried because they were given under the proffer deal. Ladies and gentlemen, most of the people in the public first became aware of Keefe D's statements through Greg Kading's DVD and his book Murder Rap, if you will, right? So that's how we became aware of it. Let's be clear. So Keefe D's former lawyer, who's no longer his attorney now, right, had spoken out. But here's where it gets messy. Keefe D's own former lawyer, right, basically said publicly that those 2009 words could actually make Keefe D liable. Why? Because while the proffer deal may have protected him on a federal level, listen, while that proffer deal may have protected him on a federal level, right, it did not shield him from state level prosecution in Nevada. So everybody who's wondering like, well, how and why, and that's the reason why, right? And so when he spoke to the investigators with the LVPD in 2009, right, they did not offer any kind of deal. They simply told him before, at the beginning of the interview, that, you know, basically what he can say can and could be used against him. But what the government was doing, the state government was doing, they wanted to have their own confession, not the situation that he had gave to the feds. And so Keefe D agreed to do it. Who was his lawyer at that time? I do not know. It wasn't Carl Arnold. It wasn't his new attorneys that he has now. Now that Carl Arnold was no longer on the case, right? Think about that for a minute. Think about it. For years, Keefe D has been talking freely on TV and documentaries and in his book about being there when Tupac was killed. But his lawyer is essentially saying, wait a minute, Keefe, those confessions could come back to haunt you. And as of right now, they did, right? Keefe D was indicted in 2023 in Nevada for Tupac's murder, ladies and gentlemen. Right? So not only did the 2009, once again, because best believe the statement was used, right, in the grand jury, as well as other testimony, the art of dialogue interviews, the Vlad interview, all of those were used in the grand jury. You can use those, right? And so with that being said, that's what has led up to him being incarcerated at this particular time, right? So let's deal with how the law works, right? Let's break it down so we're all clear, you know, as to how this works. The proffer deal is like a handshake agreement with the federal prosecutors. But Nevada, in its own state, with its own prosecutors, its own laws, and its own ability to go after someone for murder, right? They have their own right, their own rules, their own laws, right? That has nothing to do with the feds. Though at the time, when Keefe D agreed to give his statement to the feds and go talk to the LVPD, both of them agreed that he wouldn't be prosecuted, right? So listen, so when Keefe D sat down in 2009, right? Or 2008 and confessed 2008 and 2009 and confessed to being involved in the murder, it was like he handed them the blueprint, basically, right? He told the story in detail. His former lawyer now says flat out, those statements could be used to hold him liable in a Nevada courtroom in relation to the 2009 situation. Get it? So the people that really don't understand that, like I said, once again, it's time that you really understand what this is and what it means. And guess what? That's exactly what happened when they arrested Keefe D in 2023, ladies and gentlemen. For everybody, for all that we didn't know. Like I said, the public didn't know that Keefe D was a federal informant. The public didn't know that he, you know what I mean? He had been involved with all of these other cases and things like that. We are now, as this trial and, you know, all of the information is unfolding, we are now coming to understand that this is what was going on. Like I said, the bigger lesson here, right? This is a cautionary tale, ladies and gentlemen, a cautionary tale. When you're out here talking reckless, you know, taking penitentiary chances, thinking that your deal in one courtroom, right, is going to save you everywhere, right? Because Keefe D was out here saying, you know, I got to deal with the U.S. attorney, homie, you know, right? He said, when you're out here talking reckless, thinking that your deal in one courtroom is going to save you everywhere, you're playing yourself. Keefe D thought he had immunity and that he was immune because he cooperated with the feds, right? That's what he thought. But the state of Nevada didn't sign off on that, ladies and gentlemen. They didn't sign off on that. That's why he's being charged in Nevada right now. And ladies and gentlemen, that's why he's sitting where he's sitting today. His own words, his own so-called confession became the noose around his neck. And now even his own former lawyer admits at the time, right, that he was representing them also, right? Keefe D's mouth wrote the check that his life really couldn't cash. And it's so unfortunate. So like I said, this is a cautionary tale. And as we see, you know, other cases happen and people cooperating and we thinking that they one thing and they, you know, in the street, they're professing to be this. And then when that pressure come, they can't handle it, man. And they start talking. They can't handle it. Like I said, once again, you know, all of this, the posturing and stuff like that, you know, you really understand that pressure busts pipes and make water rush uphill. Like they said, a lot of niggas talk that shit, but a lot of niggas don't keep it real when it come down time for what has to go down to go down. So my thing is, like I said, man, look, you can bend it, but don't break it. Stay out the way. You know what I mean? Stay out the way. You know, like I said, once again, and like I said, in thinking about, in closing thoughts, right? We always say, right? Truth crush the ground and will rise again, right? The truth crushed to the ground will rise again. You see what I'm saying? So when people think that they, you know, they might be telling a lie on one thing and they might be crushing the truth down to the ground, the truth crushed to the ground will rise again. And in this case, the truth about Tupac's murder is rising piece by piece. So one may think that they can, you know, bury it and, you know, yeah, man, under this, all of this confusion and lies and all of this other stuff. The truth, like I said, man, lies run sprints, the truth runs marathons, basically, in other words, right? So the real question is this, right? Will Keefe D's 2009 confession be the nail in the coffin for him legally, or will his defense team find a way to spin it? That's going to be a tough one. That's what I try to explain to people, right? Ladies and gentlemen, drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Keefe D's sealed his own fate back in 2009, or is this just another example of the system playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers, right? I'm your boy Delray Richardson, ladies and gentlemen. And like I said, once again, yeah, you know, always remember, man, like I said, your Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. It may be your best defense against anything. Like I said, furthermore, and that could be anything from being in a traffic stop, you know, you find yourself being involved in felonious activity or anything like that, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, first and foremost, always remember, keep your mouth shut. Invoke your Fifth Amendment right to remain silent and ask for your lawyer. It's just as simple as that. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, your boy Delray, straight gang.
Life is like cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.